So big drop. I know that John worked with the county to get this data for us. Don't know what would have caused that decline. Maybe everybody did their building and took advantage of the lower interest rates, and now they're just doing smaller projects. I don't know what the reason is, but those are the numbers that are driving that decline, at least for the first half of the year. Maybe we'll see more improvement this year, the second half of the year. Interest on investments, not a super big number, but just some recent trends. We were in the $26,000 range a few years ago. Last year we hit $96,000. This year we're budgeting $110,000, and we will definitely hit that and exceed that. I expect we're going to be in the $140,000 range this year. And really two reasons. We did this before last year, and we did it again more recently, where we shifted money from our LAIF account into CDs, short-term CDs, to take it, like all of you I'm sure have done, take advantage of the higher interest rates on the low end of the curve or the short end of the curve. Eventually, LAIF's going to catch up, so we're not going to have that opportunity anymore. In fact, they're starting to approach 3 or 4% more recently. But at least we're able to capitalize on higher interest rates or interest returns on those monies we have. Because the dollars aren't growing, it's just the rate of return. So this is kind of, the yellow is our preliminary year-end projection that we kind of went through, and then and by the way, that's about 2.5 versus 2.7 adopted budget. So we're almost a little bit more than $200,000 that we're projecting this year. We'd be under budget. Our preliminary projections for next year are going to assume growth into the $2.6 million range. Again, property tax is the big number. We're expecting about 3.5% growth there. Sales tax is 3%, just kind of essentially CPI. Same with the property transfer tax. But for the most part, everything we're assuming is going to be flat because it's just they're volatile and it's hard to really anticipate. And plus, they're just small dollars. So on the expenditure side, I won't spend too much time on this, but just to show you by department, where this year we're seeing some variances, as you can imagine, in the city administrator's office. 3 of the 4 positions were vacant some part of the first half of the year, including a city manager position vacant for 4 months, I believe. So we're seeing some savings through middle of the year that we're expecting that's going to carry to the end of the year, obviously. We're not going to expect to see a doubling or anything like that because those positions are now filled. So I'll speak to kind of those departments. So 2 main categories within the city administrator's budget: the salary savings that I mentioned of $93,000, but we also are seeing a savings in the consulting fees. This is project management, Alan Palermo, for all our various CIP projects. What we end up doing is, rather than charging his time, other company's time, to this account in the general fund, we're charging them directly to the project where they belong. So he's working on an HVAC project, and his time should be charged and his cost should be charged to that project to fully capture the cost of that. So in total, we're not saving money. It's just where we're categorized in that. And then records management, we do see some savings, but only because we haven't yet received an invoice for the work that was done the first half of the year. Non-departmental, we're seeing about $40,000 in savings through the half of the year, but it's all really just a timing thing. Our insurance premiums were all paid in the first half of the year. And then emergency preparedness, we've spent most of that money in the first half of the year. So again, all those will normalize by the end of the year, and don't expect to have much savings there. So this is, I think, kind of the more important of all that. So the adopted budget, as I mentioned, on an operating basis, we had a $206,000 surplus, which again will help pay for our capital project. This year we're projecting that we're still going to end up with a surplus because even though our revenues are down, our expenditures are also down, so we're going to still end up with about a $221,000 surplus on a preliminary basis. For next year, what I did on the expenditure side, I just added increases to salaries based per the MOU. It goes up by a CPI factor. Everything else I kept the same. That's sort of how we approach things on a status quo basis. So we're still looking at an operating surplus on a very preliminary basis of $133,000 for next year, and those numbers will move slightly. But I think so. The point is we're not dealing with any kind of expected structural problem next year. Revenues are going to be below budget this year. Expenditures will also be below budget, and our general fund remains structurally balanced going into next year, at least at this point.
But the $200,000 is really just the short of building permits. I mean, to overly simplify this.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think it's gonna be quite $200,000. It's gonna be a combination of some property tax, but most of it's gonna be attributable to that, that's correct.
Right.
That's what I got. Happy to answer questions.
I looked at it before.
Yeah, so did I.
Okay.
I mean, it all makes sense.
Yeah, it's nothing, we're still early in the process, so we got some time. And these numbers will be revised as we go along until we get to May.
And I did like this year how because halfway through the year, it always looks like we're gonna be a tremendous deficit because of the way the numbers come in. By you doing it rather than 50-50, the 45 or whatever, is a much better way of doing
Yeah.
it. Because it makes everybody think that there's a big problem and there's
Right.
not. So I like that.
Yeah.
That's it. I was happy.
Okay.
So then the next step is to figure out the budget for next year, and we also have to talk to the other council members about what projects we will and will not be proceeding with, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Because that could be a problem.
That's correct. And we'll work closely with Robert to discuss those projects.
I'm sorry, what?
We'll work with Robert to discuss those projects, so when we present him, you have a clear understanding of which ones we think we can push forward and ones where maybe not, so.
And I think it'd be handy if you showed where the buckets are. So we put X dollars into, I remember it was 300 grand or something like that in the tennis court thing, and just what the projected expenses of those things would be
Right.
against them.
Yeah.
Because the fact that's in that, not that we're not gonna do the tennis court thing, but if we're not gonna do the tennis court thing to move that to something else, I mean, it's all it is.
Why would we not do the tennis court?
We're going to do the tennis court thing. I'm just saying is, if there's something on there that we've been putting money into,
Like sewer down to
yes.
the Harbor Freeway, or to this 405?
Yeah, but now Ted Lieu's gonna get us his own bill, $1 million. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was approved.
approved.
They just signed that thing.
That-
They just gave us, they're gonna give us $1 million. So it's gonna cost us like 200 and something thousand to get the sewer to here from Crenshaw.
Not from Crenshaw, from,
Rolling Hills Road.
there's a road on Rolling Hills Road,
Lariat.
about partway down. Yeah.
But then we have to fix part of the curve.
Lariat, I think is the name of it.
Right?
And
So
fixing
what
part of the
happened
curve.
From Lariat the rest of the way down, what happened?
Yes.
That would be a phase 2, which we haven't even broached.
We haven't talked about that one yet.
Either way. But that's the difference though. Before, when they used to ignore us, we ignored them. We didn't ask them for money. Now we're asking them for money and we haven't quite figured out is it worth the money. Because the 2 telephone pole projects, it still costs us a bunch of money. The fire ones costing us a bunch of money. The fact that they're paying a ton doesn't mean we're getting any value out of it.
And just to be clear, ideally, the 2 utility
Right.
grant projects won't cost us anything because we'll be using the Rule 28 credits
Right.
as our
Yeah, no,
quarter match.
yeah,
Yeah.
but in theory. And that, I mean, and everyone else giving us because it's all going away. I mean, to me, that's the best one we have. We're getting rid of something that's gonna become worthless and getting some value out of it by
Right.
getting grants, which is, yeah.
So we'll do that. We'll prepare all the projects and we'll identify the buckets in which they're being allocated and whether or not we can pour it into another project if the council decides not to proceed with them. So we'll work on that.
And I didn't present it tonight, and I probably should have, but with council, I did present to them where we are with our reserves. We had a number of budget amendments this year for one-time costs. Some were discretionary, most of them were not discretionary. I think we think about what our policy is with regard to our reserve for contingencies. The monies we have above that are in the $700,000 to $800,000 range. So if you're going to look at how much do we have to spend on new projects, because we've already kind of set aside the monies in a sense for the other projects you've sort of approved. We're down to that level of funding for those kind of any new stuff. Certainly, we can reevaluate the policy to see, because it's at $3 million now, that reserve, which is based on our adopted revenues or actual revenues at the $3 million reserve. But those are the kind of numbers we're kind of going to be evaluating to see what can we afford from a capital perspective.
Yeah, I'd just like to finish something. I mean, we started 900 things, and I think it'd be nice to get something off the list. I mean,
Yeah, noted. We're,
We did finish 3 projects last year. Smaller ones, but.
Yeah.
So, do you want to make a motion to receive and file?
sure.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to receive file. I don't know, apparently. All in favor? Aye. You can still make the motion.
Oh,
You can run
well,
it.
but you have
Jim,
to-
I don't see it, whatever, just,
Okay,
we're fine.
so good,
Okay.
thank you.
great,
very
thank
much.
you.
very much.
Thank you, Robert, so much for being here.